All right. So Rahul, we are live now. I mean, we are recording the session now. So this is a series. I'm hoping to talk to people who have lived through the emergency in 1975, what their recollections are, what they were doing, how did they react, and things like that. And we can also delve into other issues related to that. So June 25th, 1975. Do you recall what you were doing? What memories you had of that day? I know you probably are maybe too young at that time, but still, is there anything that stands out on that day for you?
Yes, because yeah, we used to have this a newspaper called Statesman. It is still there, but at that time it was very famous because it had an editor, the managing editor, C.R. Irani, who was very famous. So on that first day, they published a blank page, because once the emergency was declared, they wanted to go with an editorial criticizing it. So that was not allowed. So the page that, so I distinctly remember that, that the Statesman, I used to read the paper a lot. I was only 15 years old at that time, but uh, I used to stay with my grandparents, so my in Calcutta. So my grandparent, grandfather, he was an avid reader. Uh, he was an avid reader, had a lot of other books and things. But from him, I got this thing about reading. So I used to read the paper. First, my grandfather used to read, and I used to read the paper. And so the paper was blank. So I distinctly remember that. So, and after that, obviously, the censorship started. So later on, they used to come with the paper, but it used to be censored. No news would be there. But Statesman, they were saying that whenever there was some censored piece, they wouldn't put anything else there. It would go blank. So that way the thing was there that we got to know about this. But by that time, actually, in West Bengal, I don't know what happened in the rest of the country. In West Bengal, by 1975, the Naxalite movement had gone, more or less. It had been crushed. So the kind of protest that could have been there, against this emergency, that wasn't there. And they arrested all the people from the opposition parties and all, and put them into jail. And people like us, we were not active politically at that time, so we were too young for that. And my grandparents and all, they were just the normal middle class people. So after that, that initial stage, that shock was there, that Statesman has come up with a blackboard. After that, there was nothing. It just went on casually. I mean, I personally didn't feel anything. Whereas earlier in the Naxal movement, I could see a lot of things because some of my relatives went to jail in that. In the Naxal movement, some of my elder people from our family, they were involved, so they went to jail and they had to be bailed out and various kinds of things. So that the impact of that was greater. The emergency itself, there was not much. I don't remember much after that.
Oh, okay. But that was a wonderful way to, criticize the government's action by just publishing a blank slate if you're not allowed to criticize. I think that was a wonderful way to put it out there.
Yeah, because later on, after the emergency was lifted in 1977, C.R. Irani got an award, the Freedom House Award. That was an international journalism award. He got that award for his, such a stand that he took. So that was a pretty famous kind of thing that he did at that time.
Wow. See, this was my idea of learning about what happened. And in the first few minutes itself, I learned about this fine journalist. So thank you for that. Uh, so before we delve further, I would like you to introduce yourself. What you do, where you live, how would you like to describe yourself? Just so our listeners also get a glimpse of who we are talking to.
Yeah, I'm Rahul Banerjee. So I am a civil engineer by profession, and that is in the sense that I passed out. I have a BTech degree in civil engineering, but I never practiced civil engineering because from college during the college days, I went to college in 1978 after passing out from school, I went to college. So once I went to college, I got involved in various political activities, mass demonstrations for rights, this, that, and all. Throughout my college years, I was involved from 78 to 83. And so by the time I was passing out of college, I was totally radicalized. So I never joined the corporate sector. And I instead started working with Adivasis, first in West Bengal. I'm from Calcutta. I'm a Bengali from Calcutta. And then later on, some friends of mine were working in Madhya Pradesh. So I came to Madhya Pradesh. And since then, from 1985 onwards, I am in Madhya Pradesh, mostly working with Adivasis and also Dalits on various issues. Initially, it was the rights issues of the Adivasis, the right to forest, the right to a livelihood, and various other rights that are there, entitlements that they are deprived of. What they should actually, in the constitution, Indian constitution, a lot of provisions have been made to safeguard the Adivasis, but they just get ignored. They are not implemented. So the main thrust of my activities has been to try and get as much as possible, get them implemented, and even improve the legal framework in various ways. When I started work, the legal framework had a lot of problems, which as a consequence of various actions that we took in our area and also all over the country, various Adivasi organizations that have worked. So that legal improvement has become more favorable. But the problem is always implementation. The implementation does not take place as it should. So in our area, in a small way, we have tried that. Same thing with Dalits. And later on, while working, I came up with this whole thing about the kind of development, the way it's not only inequitable, it is also unsustainable ecologically. So whereas we from the beginning, the inequitable part, the justice part, we have been fighting. But now for the last 10, 15 years, it has come to the sustainability angle also, so soil and water conservation, and then agriculture, which is now the major problem. The agriculture has come to a very serious problem, the ecological sustainability, which is also affecting the economic aspect. The economic problem is arising because of the ecological unsustainability. So all this, because of this farmer problems are there. Now the protests are going on, and the way the state looks at the whole thing, state looks at it as a market problem, when actually it is a production problem. The production itself is problematic. So you can't solve it with a market problem.
Yeah.
All those things are there. So we are addressing that. So when we tried to do that, the thing is that I had a theoretical understanding of the whole thing. But then because my wife, she is a Dalit, she is a farmer. She comes from a farmer background. So around 5 years ago, she said that she wants to go back to doing farming. So as a consequence, for 5 years from 2015 onwards, we are actually farming on the field. So whatever theoretical knowledge I had, we had, that has now been reinforced by the actual problem that we are facing. We are a small farmer, in the sense that we have 1 acre land. So we are in India, 85% of the farming households are small farmers. They have less than 2 hectares of land, and the average land holding is some 0.8 hectares or so, even less. So we are in that category. So now we know what is the problem faced by small farmers, and especially organic. We are organic farmers. So our problem is compounded because we are small farmers and we are small organic farmers. So the whole thing about making agriculture sustainable, now we know a lot of things. We don't have solutions, but we know the problem in and inside out.
Right.
So even all these debates that are going on with regard to the farming thing. So a lot of people, I debate. I go on to other people's wall also in Facebook, and my wall also I am writing. So in that, I can debate with facts and figures now, you see, and my own experience. So that is the background, the general background of my work.
Right, that's a lot. That's a lot you captured in those few minutes. But I'd like you to go back to 1975 and what you said, 1978 and till 1982. I think that is also fascinating. from a civil engineer, you, by the end of it, you got radicalized so much that you didn't feel you're a fit for corporate, and you jumped into rights-based issues and rights-based movement. So we'll talk about that. That's very interesting. But before I get there, in 1975, when you said that, you know, you saw that the day emergency was announced, you saw statesmen give that blank newspaper, and after that things were back to normal. You didn't see anything else happening, in at least in your neighborhood, which would mean to say that do you recall that people were just living their lives? There was no talk whatsoever. Absolutely, it was just like any other day. They woke up the next day and they went about doing their work. Is that how?
Yeah, that was more or less what was happening in Kolkata. You know, I was very young. I didn't have experience elsewhere.
Right.
But the main, why did the emergency come? You know, the emergency came because of the Bihar Andolan, Sampurna Kranti Andolan that Jayaprakash Narayan initiated in Bihar, and that went to an extent that was a huge like now we have the farmer struggle. That was even a bigger struggle. You know, that was the biggest mass movement after independence. After 1947, once we gained independence, the biggest mass movement of people coming in. You know, you had the Naxalite movement and all those were not mass movements. There were small movements, some armed people trying to, you know, fight the state and all that. But this one, the one that took place in Bihar, the Sampurna Kranti Andolan, and it came to a stage where Jayaprakash Narayan gave a call to the army and police saying that you disobey the government. You know, this government has become illegitimate. You disobey the government, and you know, you also revolt. And so that was the stage at which, you know, Indira Gandhi declared the emergency. But now, so what happened was that they declared the emergency and then clamped down all over the country. So they clamped down in Bihar. So if I had been in Bihar, I would have seen a lot more things. But since I was in Calcutta, there was nothing. As I said earlier, that in Calcutta, before that, in the late 60s and up to 1970, 71, there was this Naxalite movement. You see, so that Naxalite movement had a tremendous impact. I was very small at that time. 69, I was only 9 years old, and then up to 71 or so, 10 or 11. But even so, because from my family also 2 or 3 people, they got arrested because of their active participation in Naxalite movement. So that Naxalite movement had a tremendous impact on me and on people in Kolkata and all that. But that was crushed. So after what normally happens is that when a movement gets crushed, then after that there's a depoliticization. So in Kolkata, in West Bengal, the whole the milieu was one of depoliticization, and the crushing was a very horrific crushing. You know, the police atrocities on all these Naxalites, whoever was connected with the Naxalites, they killed them and all that extrajudicial killings. Not only the leaders, everyone, whoever was connected. I remember my relatives, my elders, who were arrested at that time, somehow they managed to escape. You know, somehow they were not killed and all that. So there was a real pressure. And so after that, there was this depoliticization. So in Calcutta, there was nothing. But if you go back to why did the emergency take place, after you had contacted me, I just went and checked, you know, what was the situation that led to this kind of a thing. So if you see in 1971 and 72, the GDP growth was very low. You know, 1971 GDP growth was 1.64%. 72 it was negative, minus 0.553%, like that. Again in 74 it was minus 1.185%. And in 1975 GDP growth was minus 9.15%. 76 it was minus. So you had an economic problem there. You know, that there was some problem. Of course, there was the war that cost a lot. 71 war was, but you can see that even after the war, even due to the war, the GDP growth went down to 1.64%. But after that, the GDP is going into negative. I mean, the economy is tanking. So that obviously has an effect. And what kind of effect? It has an effect on the people, on the masses. At that time, even see this is poverty calculation that is there, that how many people are below the poverty line. There is a lot of debate as to, like, people like me, we question the way that poverty line is defined. We think that that poverty line should be higher. The amount of the income that is the poverty line income should be higher than what is calculated. So actually, the people like us, a lot of people are there who argue that actually a lot of more people are poor. But even if we take whatever the government is saying is the poverty line, at that time the poverty levels were 55% to 60%. That 70s, right up to the late 80s, it was going at that kind of thing. Only after liberalization, we'll go into all that later. I mean, that's another thing. But the main problem is that at that time there was this thing that first of all, around 70 to 75% of the population is in rural areas, and over on top of that, your GDP is tanking, and at the same time, you have this poverty, this high poverty level. So there is a discontent, and this was the discontent that led to the nationalite movement. Also, there is a discontent, and if you see the way, and another thing is that 1971, Indira Gandhi won the Lok Sabha elections, coming on the basis of that victory over Pakistan, and she got 68% of the seats in Parliament, Lok Sabha elections. She got 68% of the seats, but the vote percentage was only 43%, like what you have now. Here also at the present moment, the NDA that has around 42, 43% of the votes, and they have around 70% of the seats. So that is a kind of situation when you have this first past the post system. In European countries, you have the representational system, proportional representation system, where you get number of seats equal to the number of votes that you get. The percentage of votes. So in that kind of a situation, you have a coalition government. So the tendency to be authoritarian is limited out there because you have a coalition government. But in India, we have the first past the post system. So right from the time of independence, we had the Congress. They used to get 40% of the vote and 70% of the seats. So that whole thing, and if you see the difference between, say, the industrialization in US and UK and the industrialization in India. The US and UK, they exploited people from elsewhere in the colonies and various places. They exploited those people to industrialize. India problem was that we can't exploit anybody else. So in our country, the poor were exploited. Mainly the farming sector, agriculture sector, the whole. If you have to garner resources for industrialization, that has to come from the poor people. You have to extract from them, exploit them, devastate their natural resources. Adivasis mainly, and Dalits and all, they are suffering and all. So this was the history. This was the history that led to that kind of a situation where we are having GDP is tanking and poverty is at such a high level. But on the political front, we don't. The opposition, they can't. You won't believe it. The first no confidence motion against the Congress party came in 1964. 1947, no, 1962 or 64. 64, Nehru died. I think 62. I don't exactly remember. But the thing is that for 15 years, there was no confidence motion against the Congress. In 1962, and that was a famous motion that Lohia brought. And it's called the Barana Charana debate. So that how much is spent on the poor and how much is spent on the government. That kind of debate. So, and Lohia came up with statistics, all these statistics that I have quoted, that 55% of people are poor, and GDP is tanking, these kind of things, and he won the debate. In that first no confidence motion, he didn't win the debate. He won the debate morally. He could show from his facts. Obviously, on the voting, because Congress had such a majority, the motion was lost. But what I'm trying to say is that the way that India had, we are talking today about the BJP being authoritarian. But actually, if you see, even the Congress government was authoritarian. Say like 50s to 60s. I remember even in Alirajpur, the area where I work, in the 50s and 60s, there was a socialist movement that was crushed by the Congress. And even throughout the country, socialists and Congress, they had quite a base. In the first elections, the socialists and the communists together got some 20% of the vote. But since it was the first past the post system, they got only 2 or 3% of the seats. And then the Congress, they ran a repressive regime after that. And at that time there was no press, and there was not that level of awareness that is there now. So what the BJP is doing now, the Congress has done earlier. So the Congress is not a very a good kind of thing, and they have created that kind of political environment. So that first time in 1970s, in the 70s, because of Jayaprakash Narayan, there was this upsurge, and there was a massive upsurge at that time, which I know now. I didn't know at that time, which I now know because I've read all these things. So this is the context of what happened at that time, why this happened. So this whole authoritarian streak that is there within the Congress, that people they went roughshod over that, and they imposed this emergency, which is a fascistic action. That emergency, that's an authoritarian action. So that is the whole context that has come from there, and now the BJP is cashing in on. Now, earlier the Congress used to get 40% of the votes and 70% of the seats. Now BJP and NDA is getting 40% of the votes and 70% of the seats, and they're also showing the same tendencies of muzzling the opposition and muzzling the press. We are talking about press being Godi media. I mean, press is throughout the 19 throughout the 1940s, 50s, and 60s, press did not criticize the government. Not much, very, very little. You had only one or two people like, Ramnath Goenka in the Indian Express and C.R. Irani in Statesman. Otherwise, other papers, they were with the government only all the time. So that is the context of what happened at that time and how this whole movement started. And then, but what I would say is that Indira Gandhi, instead of continuing, she with that, instead she didn't go towards totalitarianism. After 75, for 2 years, then somehow she thought that she would win the election again, and she held the election, and she lost that election. So that led to a different kind of thing. But there was every possibility. She could have said that, okay, I don't want democracy at all, and she could have become this thing completely totalitarian. But that didn't happen. So I don't know how that happened. Why she went for that election? So that she went for the election, and then that came back. And then after that, of course, much more the society has got much more democratized. So right. That now for the BJP to do something like that is going to be tough. So a lot of people are movements will come up, like the farmer movement has come, and then there will be other movements also. Continuously, there are people who are dissatisfied with what is happening, and so they will protest. That is the whole.
So one related question to this, the Sampurna Kranti Andolan that JP started in Bihar was started on the premise of the economic inequalities and the poverty. These were the main reasons why this Andolan was first started, or what was the background for that Andolan itself?
Yes, it started off with that, that poverty. See, first, before that, there was the Gujarat Navnirman Andolan. That was 2 or 3 years before that in Gujarat. That also JP was involved, and that was basically students. And what I said, that because those numbers are there, that poverty is very high and GDP is tanking, so the economy is in bad shape. So that is always a trigger. That is always, that basic trigger is there. And then if there is a political mass mobilization that can, capitalize on that basic trigger of, people being dissatisfied with the government, then it can come up. Right. The way the farmer agitation is going on, so throughout the country, everywhere, sort of small agitations, even in Indore, people are agitating, and they're not to that extent of, going and stopping something. But they're going there. They're going and joining the farmers there in Delhi, and things. People have gone from here. And then generally, if you talk, like if I talk to people out here, I know a lot of people in the BJP, the farmers who are in the BJP. So privately, they are telling me that this is good. The Sikhs are doing right, because we also want MSP. So what if we don't have MSP? No, we want MSP like Sikhs. If the Sikhs are fighting, then they're fighting for a right cause. So even a farmer will intrinsically, on his own, he will automatically say that yes, we need support,
Right.
because farming is in crisis. And they're also saying that we have to switch. This whole problem of chemical agriculture, it's in very any farmer you talk to, they will say that it's in a shambles. We're just putting on all these species, these fertilizer and all, and we are not getting output enough.
Right.
So that is what should be done. That the whole country should switch to organic farming.
Yeah.
That is the only solution. You make it sustainable. Only the problem with organic farming is that where will you get so much manure? So
Yeah.
the manure you need a lot of labor, to create that, make that manure on the field and all that. So the government should provide subsidy for that.
Yeah.
Instead of that, it's doing something else. Anyway, that's a big debate there. But the problem is that economic problem that was there at that time, that it started off with that, and then because that problem was so deep, and Bihar obviously is a very poor. It's always been very poor. So this whole movement started off against that, and then it gained this thing. It was both corruption in the government, because that time I think it was Jagannath Mishra or somebody highly corrupt chief minister. So that corruption was one plank, and the other was that our economic goals are not being, our economic situation is very bad. So that's how it started off, and it gained mass. It gained mass because it struck a chord with the people. So it just went on increasing and went on increasing, and after that, he gave that kind of this thing.
The call to
A call call to the police and the army, to mutiny and come out against the government. So then they took this extreme step of declaring the emergency and putting everybody into jail. That's the thing.
Got it. So now let's go back to that 1978. So you were in college, and you said that during that the 3-4 years that you were in college, your views and your perspectives changed dramatically. So first of all, what college were you studying in? Because I don't think that kind of environment exists now. And number two was emergency, what happened in like 3-4 years ago, did that weigh in heavily while you were at college?
Yeah, because 1977, when that election was held, and this whole thing, once everybody was released, actually a lot of people didn't even know what was happening, that so many people are in jail and things like that. That only became revealed when these people came out of jail. So in 1977, this election was held, at which Indira Gandhi lost and the Janata Party came to power. And after that, in West Bengal, the communists came to power. CPM came to. Earlier, they had some United Front government also in the late 60s. Twice or thrice, the communist government was there. But now they came with a solid majority. So that CPM rule of 35 years, which ended in 2005 or something like that, that started in 1977. So once that started, that lot of they released a lot of these people who had been arrested during the Naxal Andolan. The CPM released them, so they also came out. So in Kharagpur, I joined this Indian Institute of Technology Kharagpur in '78. After graduating from my school, finishing my school education, so I joined this college in '78. So in '78 in Kharagpur, there were these Naxals who had come out from jail, and they began, because the whole milieu had changed after the emergency. Now it was a more open kind of milieu where a lot of demonstrations were taking place and all that. So I joined some of these people, these groups. So basically, we used to go around and do some the science education work and things with the IIT Kharagpur is located in a tribal area. So we used to go and work with them, and then we saw the poverty and things. So while studying, only I decided while after 1 or 2 years, after doing this work, taking part in various agitations and things, I said that, this is what has to be done. The kind of education that we are getting in IITs and all, that is not relevant to, the development of the country. Mostly that's what happens. People just study there and then put off abroad, and that was what's happening in the IIT. So I said that, what about this country? We have to do something. So that is how I changed slowly. And then by the time I graduated, I decided that I will work for the Adivasis. That's how the change came.
You said that you joined some of these Naxal groups or people who are associated with those movements. Were they not looked upon as somebody who took up the armed struggle, and they are something that you should be not associating with? Wasn't that the case back in the day, or that opinion
No,
formed
no,
back later?
these after the this thing was crushed, the armed struggle part went out. So it was all, these were all, overground groups. There were Naxals who had come out from jail, and then they decided that, you can't fight the state. So these groups that I was associated with, they were in the thing that, we have to organize the people. Just doing some small group of people fighting an armed struggle against such a huge state is not feasible. Whatever happened in Naxal Andolan, that's okay. But now the thing is that the people I was associated with were these people who are basically from the left, who are Marxists, but who are saying that, this Naxal armed revolution is out of the question. First, we have to, organize the masses. Let us try and see whether we can get them their basic rights that are there already in the constitution. This whole thing about, overthrowing the state and bringing in communist dispensation, that is not feasible. That's what they were saying. And then I went, and then I started reading. I had not read all these Marx and things at that time. And I read Marx, Gandhi, all these things that I read in when I went to college only, because the IIT library has a very good section, political science section. So I read a lot of stuff. In our time it was very easy. The civil engineering, you just, just before the exams, you just read up everything and go and give. And anyway, a guy going into IIT has a certain level of proficiency. So I did not have to expend much time to, get my grades as for civil engineering. That I has to do with a minimal amount of this thing, and what the rest of the time I has to spend reading all these other stuff. That was there, and then talking to people and this all these things. So basically, the thing is that even the liberal framework, the constitution is a liberal democratic framework. Even that is not being implemented. Now, neither is it implemented now, nor was it then. Now at least there is some more, mobilization to try and get it implemented. At that time, there was nothing. So almost nothing. So except for all these communist groups that are there. So that's how it wasn't an armed group. That the groups that I was associated with, they were saying that we have to fight for rights. Let's go and let's organize the people to at least claim their rights. Okay, so that was the kind of work that I was associated, and that's what I have done. Because I don't think you can fight the state in this armed kind of struggle. It's very difficult. So those people who are fighting, they're fighting. It's fine, but I don't believe that we can make much headway. So that's how the whole thing is.
I mean, that was the general notion of the moment you mention the word Naxal, it means armed struggle. Till date, that's the image of a Naxal that, people carry. And that's why I wanted to clarify when you said you associated with them, who were these people and what were they doing? But within the college itself, how was the atmosphere like? Like, were your professors at that time allowed free debate, free discussions on these political actions, or be it emergency or anything, along those lines? Were politically active discussions, debates a thing that was seen as
No,
something
no, not much.
involved in?
No, not at all. There are some one or two professors, but they were not very active. It
Mm.
was the students were there. You see, so all these other elements from outside IIT, the Naxal kind of people, and the students. There's a considerable amount of students at in our consider not considerable anyway. The more than what it is now. You know that now you have students that are all oriented towards career. You very few students you will find who are interested in doing this kind of work. But in our time there were a lot of students. So this student groups were there, and they used to do all these. They have these meetings and things and study circles and all that kind of stuff. And in that, one or two professors used to be there. But within the IIT and all that, there was nothing. I mean, they never raised something, say, holding something within the IIT. Professors get together and express opinion about something else that is going on in society that is bad. That was not there. That was there.
All right. I think there was quite some insight into the 70s and 80s. So the after the emergency situation between 1977 and let's say till 2000, was there any other time where you felt like, the same kind of restrictions and curtailing the media or arresting people who are vocal with their political or social movements? Did you see that phase continue in some way or form, or that actually died down a little?
No, no, yes, everywhere. After that, from 78, 83, I graduated in 83, and in 85 I came to Ali Rajput. So even between 70 and 83, when I was in college, once or twice I was arrested. Whenever you put some demonstration and you block the road or something like that, you will be arrested. But those are just ritual kind of arrest. You are arrested, taken to the police station, and you have to sign some bond and all, and you are released. And then in 85, I came to Ali Rajput and I began organizing with other friends. We started demanding rights. So we were put into jail. So from 85 to right up to 2001. The last time I went to jail was in 2001. So
When you say you were arrested, so not the cursory ones, but the actual ones, when you said in 85 to the last time 2001, was an FIR registered
yes,
against
yes.
you? And
I
then,
have had I have had more than 50 FIRs against me.
wow. And then when you were arrested and you were kept in jail, what was the treatment like? Like, were you really treated as an enemy of the state, or were you treated as somebody who was in the group, and then, they throw a whole bunch of people in the jail, keep you there for some time, and then, that's like a warning to you that, okay, if you cross the line, then you will face further serious consequences. So what was the treatment like?
No, treatment was not okay because I always I used to be very feisty. So from the moment I'm arrested, I start telling the police that these are the laws of under trials, and you have to follow these laws and things. And anyway, they know that this fellow is politically very active and things. So I have, though some of my friends they got beaten up once, but I have never got beaten up by the police. So I immediately this even that last one, that 2001 when I was arrested, that was the longest. I spent some 2.5 months or 3 months in jail before I got bail. Normally you get bail once you are arrested, you put into jail, and then they apply for bail and you get bail. So but this time they cooked up all kinds of things, waging war against the state and whatnot and things like that. And then I was there, but even during that time also, despite they're trying to say that this fellow is a very dangerous kind of thing, I wasn't beaten up. I have never been beaten up by the police because I'm always very feisty. I say that these are the laws and things, and you have to follow these laws. So they follow it with me. But what the important point that is that what you are asking, whether people are arrested anytime. I mean, this has been going on since the 1947 only. So any time people agitate for their rights, the state comes down on them. So it's not as if, BJP. But the only difference is that in 2000, at the time I was active, see, 2001, that was the last time I came out of jail. And then I decided that, there is no point in this kind of, whatever kind of, that militant kind of mobilization where go against the state and all that, because we are very powerless kind of people. So since then, I have stopped doing that. I don't take part in street demonstrations and things anymore. So I do other kind of stuff. All these the soil and water conservation work, sustainable agriculture, women's rights, this, that. But I have not. So I have not been arrested since that. I've never after that. I have never done that. But at that time, the UAPA was not there. Now you have this Unlawful Activities Prevention Act. So under that, if you are arrested under that, then you don't get bail. The whole UAPA has been made in such a way that ostensibly to stop terrorism. The state says that the terrorists with the basic judicial principle that is there, that bail is a right, and bail is common and jail is uncommon. Normally, you will give somebody bail, unless, of course, if there's some serious problem, does a murder or something like that, and all attempt to murder and all these serious cases. Then even so, then even after that, some 3-4 months at the most, people are kept. They get bail and they come out. But UAPA, they have overturned that principle, that bail is this thing and jail is uncommon. That principle has been overturned, saying that these terrorists, they get bail, come out, and then again they undertake another terrorist action. So if under UAPA you can be specified now, even an individual. Earlier it was that organization. But if you are associated with an organization that has been termed terrorist officially under the UAPA, if an organization has been described, has been designated as terrorist, and so there is some evidence that you are associated with that organization, even if you are not undertaking a terrorist action yourself. If they can give some kind of evidence, whatever, some fellows, some Tom, Dick, and Harry says that yes, Rahul is associated with that organization. On the basis of that, I will be put into jail and I won't get bail. Right. So that's what's happening. Whatever all these people, whether it's the CA anti-CA protesters or the Bhima Koregaon people, all these people, they have been put into jail on this kind of flimsy evidence, and they are not giving bail to them because the judges feel that these fellows, whoever they are associated. So this problem was not there in my time. When the last time, after even 2001, the UAPA problem has started from 2008-9 onwards, when they made it more strict. So after 2008-9, they amended UAPA. UAPA has been there from 1960s there, but it was innocuous kind of thing. But from 2008, they began amending it, and now 2019, they have made it even individual. If they feel that, some fellow somewhere says that, Suresh is a terrorist. So even individually, you don't need, there's no need for evidence that you are connected with some, just some Tom, Dick, and Harry says that yes, Suresh is a terrorist, you are inside under UAPA. And then you won't get bail. So this kind of problem has come from 2008 onwards. So that now the BJP is taking advantage of that. So it was brought in by the Congress only. No? The Congress had brought that in, and now the BJP is serving its own ends with that law. So that law wasn't there, but the arrest of people was there. So any people, not only I or my colleagues here in Madhya Pradesh, throughout Narmada Bachao Andolan, so many people were arrested. So wherever they, even now, even these days, till late, 1 or 2 years earlier, also people were getting arrested for in the Narmada Bachao Andolan. When they are fighting, we are basically fighting for rights. That the rehabilitation has not taken place properly. Yeah. But even so, they are being arrested. So this question that you are putting, that whether people are arrested or not, they are arrested all the time. Whether even after the emergency and all that, whenever there is a movement, like that Kudankulam movement, so many arrests were there in that I guess the nuclear power plant in Kudankulam. Yeah. Okay. So many people arrested and so many cases filed against them. Even the Thoothukudi massacre, even though there also people have been arrested against the Vedanta plant. You see, so that is there. Even even after 77, this but there was no big movement like that. You know, that 75 movement, that has been the biggest movement since independence. Before that or after that, there has not been anything of the same this thing, same kind of power that had. So that's the thing. But so that's anytime there is a movement. We had even that in 2001 when I went to jail, just 40 villages. We had mobilized in 30, 40. Actually, we were going by this fifth schedule of the constitution, which says that in Adivasi areas, you know, the Gram Sabhas become, the fifth schedule says that the Gram Sabhas in Adivasi areas, the Gram Sabhas are paramount. You know, the government can't do anything. But actually, it's not implemented. So we started implementing that, and we said that, you know, we don't want all these fellows. Police and forest and everything, we kicked everybody out. Nobody can come into our villages. We had some 30, 40 village areas. Nobody can come into our villages without our permission. And we are going to do what we want to do and things like that. So obviously the government did not like that. So they sent in their force, and there was a massive thing, and they arrested all of us, all the leaders, and we were arrested, and 4 or 5 of our colleagues were killed by the police in firing and all that kind of thing. So the thing is that anywhere, actually, we are not doing anything outside the constitution. We are saying that within the constitution, there is a provision for this, and we want that implemented. But that obviously they won't allow, even if it's there in the constitution. So that is the problem. You know, so whenever there is a massive movement, the same thing will happen. What is now the thing is that in with the farmers, the problem is that all the within the BJP also there are people who are saying that don't shoot on the farmers, because as I told you, I know farmers who are part of the BJP, the Kattar BJP, but they are also saying that what the Sikhs are doing, they're right. So that is a problem. Otherwise, if it was a Muslim this thing or something like that, by now they would have shot these people and put them into jail and all that kind of thing. Right. Even the Akali Dal, which is a partner of this thing, BJP, the Akali Dal is a partner in the NDA. Akali Dal is supporting the farmer agitation. And in Haryana, the Chautala, that fellow Yashwant Chautala or something, he has some 8 or 9 MLAs. They are also telling Haryana BJP. They are in coalition with the BJP. They are saying that you don't take any action against the farmers. Right. So that is the kind. Otherwise, right now they would have they would have just finished off these people. But because within the BJP itself there are a lot of people, who are for the farmers. So that is why this is a situation where it's become a stalemate.
Yeah, so I think what is evident is the suppression of constitutional rights to protest, right to agitate, and those things, as you mentioned, have been going on in every single decade since independence. I think that is something that has been very consistent throughout. And it's no surprise that is happening even more with the laws that have already been implemented as part of the UAPA. There's another, as part of the UPA government, sorry. There is another aspect I wanted to talk about is, have you seen in all these people's struggles or your active political life, the divide along the lines of religion? So right now, if you are a Muslim, for example, this 17-year-old kid who is a stand-up comedian, he has been arrested for more than 25 days now, and he's not even given a bail. And it's very evident that he's only arrested because of his name. There's nothing else. There is no other offense, right? Since when did making a joke become an offense that you will criminally be prosecuted without bail? So have you seen this kind of a religious divide happening even through the 70s, 80s, and 90s? Was it this always?
No, not actually. You see, this is the RSS. See, this is another aspect of the Indian polity, that we have an organization like the RSS, the Rashtriya Swayamsevak Sangh, and they are just committed to Hindu Rashtra. So their ideologue, that fellow Golwalkar, MS Golwalkar, his thoughts, if you see, they are totally, racist. They're casteist. In the Indian context, it's casteism, not racism. So they are highly casteist. It's patriarchal against the women, and it's capitalist. Whatever he says, if he has written, whatever he used to say, they have been collected together, called in a book called Bunch of Thoughts. Now, everybody should read that, to understand the psychology of the RSS. So in that, it's a totally casteist and capitalist and patriarchal dispensation. Okay, that's what he is saying, and that is what drives the RSS. And they have continuously, they have mobilized, at the grassroots level. They have people in every village. There are people who are committed to this whole idea of the Hindu Rashtra. So, and that they have been going on right since independence. Even before, it was 1925 or 26, sometime it was formed. And after that, they have been organizing along Hindu lines, that Hindu Rashtra and Hindu against the Muslims, against the Christians, everybody else but Hindus. And within the Hindus also, people like us. If I'm an atheist like now, they are collecting, the latest movement is, collecting money for the temple, Ram temple. Now, Ram temple, why do they need? There already crores of rupees are there with them. But it's not the money. It's the main thing is to just go around and, do some kind of a propaganda and then attack the Muslims and things like that. That is their agenda. So even in our colony, in the layout in which I stay, these RSS people, they went and contacted the resident welfare association that we have, the president and the executive members, and they formed a whole team of 20, 30 people, and they went around from house to house. Then they came to my house also, saying that, give chanda give donation for Ram temple. So I told them that, look, I'm an atheist. I don't believe in temple, this thing and all that. So if it is some work for the colony, it's okay. But for this, I'm not going to give. So anyway, they tried to, I said that nothing doing, I'm not giving. So this is the way they are going about, the amount of mobilization at the grassroots. What we have been able to do, we who are fighting for rights, we have not been able to do anything compared to what the RSS has done. And they have stuck to it. And they have funds also, so as they started this mobilization, they have got funds from the USA also. People in USA also, they support them. And so they have funds. The main problem with organization is what? Like for instance, I am doing organization work. Maximum I have in my lifetime, the maximum I have organized is 50 villages, and I can't go beyond that because the state is there. As soon as you try and build the movement up to a higher level, the state comes, and you have to fight the state. Then you require resources if you want to fight the state. We don't have resources. How to fight the state? So now our this thing is limited. Like for instance, in this sustainable agriculture, for 5 years we have worked. So now we have an idea of how to do this sustainable agriculture. So now we are trying to get more farmers to do this sustainable agriculture. And at the moment we have just 2 farmers, and from the next sowing season, we will have 10 farmers because we don't have resources. So if we want to have hundreds of farmers, we need a huge amount of resources to, mobilize those farmers to do sustainable. We don't have the resources. But RSS has huge amount of resources. So they have, actually, you have to come and see, you have to come and see. I have all these pracharaks are my friends, at a personal level, they're friends, but ideologically, they're all useless. Their whole, it's a blinkered kind of vision that, you have to have Hindu Rashtra. If you have a Ram temple, everything is solved. All problems will get solved. That is kind of thing. They're totally unscientific and totally, obsolete kind of ideology they have. So that is what is driving them. And they have increased this, so this whole, as the economic problem is getting worse, with time, the economic problem, because this whole liberalization thing, even in America, you can see, the way that Trump has come. The basic problem is economic. People don't have jobs and things, which is the way the economy is moving. You have automation, you have outsourcing and all that. So most people don't have secure jobs and they are underpaid and all that. So that is a worldwide global phenomenon. So to explain that this is that is not there, because the people like you and me, when we want to go and talk about these things, we don't have the funds. How many people can you go and try and convince? But if you are spreading some kind of religious mania or some rightist stuff, then a huge amount of funds is there. So whoever are the people who are controlling the society, the economics part, they want people to be, they don't want people to revolt against them. So the best is, you divert them into this thing. So whether it is America or whether it's Turkey or whether it's any other country, and whether it's India, whether it's Islam or whether it's Hindu, everywhere you will find that the orthodox kind of people who are, peddling all this kind of obsolete stuff, they have huge amount of funds. But people like us, we don't have funds. So this what you are saying, that this communalization that has taken place, this huge Hindu-Muslim divide that is there, that has been intentionally created by the RSS, and it is pushing, and it now, since 2014, it has central funds. The huge amount of money that is there at the center, that is now controlled by them. So that's a huge. So there are in each village. In each village these days, you have people from RSS who are spreading their this thing, and spreading their ideology. So what this point that you raised about this thing, that since the 1990s, so when this Ram Temple movement started, this Ram Temple thing was just this thing. It was a very obscure kind of thing. Some people in Ayodhya, they had filed a case and this and that was fighting. But these guys, RSS, they took it up, and they took that whole thing and escalated that whole thing into this Hindu Rashtra thing, and somehow all this thing that was, and the problem was that the Congress, whether it's the Congress or the SP or the BSP or the communists or the socialists, they are not solving the basic economic problems of the people. They are also following the neoliberal line. Whether it's a communist government, that is also following a neoliberal policy. It's not the communists were there for 35 years in West Bengal, 1977 to some 2005. Now it's 2020 or 2010, no, 2011. So 77, 23, 35 years. Can you imagine? If I had been in power in 35 years, the huge amount of stuff that I could have done, they were in power for 35 years, they did nothing. The poverty in so many people from West Bengal, they are all migrating all over the place, all over the country. You go, you will find people are migrating because there's not enough this thing out there, the livelihoods out there. So that is the part of the blame, no? That if you are in power, communists are in power, so socialist party like Mulayam Singh Yadav, Lalu Yadav, all these people, they were in power. Mayawati was in power. You are not using that power to solve the problems of the people. You are also siding with the capitalists. So then what will happen? This is what is going to happen. That people will get disenchanted with you, and then these other fellows will come who are even worse. So that whole thing, the way things have gone, and part of that is because of the Congress culture. The Congress, this whole thing, it's not a very democratic culture. Within the Congress party also, you don't have democracy. So they have continuously sided with the capitalist class. So the whole development history of India, if you see, it's a anti-people development that has taken place. So that is how these fellows have come to power now.
Mm-hmm. So having lived through, these 3-4 decades, and I believe that every decade has its own set of challenges, and people active through those decades will rise, will fight, will try to do this. How do you see these all these struggles coming together, culminating in? Do you see them putting up a brave front when the level of oppression rises, or do you think that, like the approach that you took, in 2001 when you got arrested after so many years of struggle. Do you think those kind of oppressive measures will eventually take toll on the people who are actively in the people's struggle, they taking the back seat? How do you see this going forward in your experience, from your experience rather?
Yeah, the problem is that this whole sustainability issue. The in our country, even today, almost 60% of the population is dependent on agriculture. And it's impossible to shift that population to what has happened in the US. In US, you have 1% of the population in agriculture. Okay, 99% of the people are in industry or services. But in India, you can't do that. USA, they could do it because they, exploited the rest of the world and they have created that kind of scene. In India, you have 60% of the people in agriculture, and agriculture is unsustainable. So in my opinion, this is my opinion, that unless we make agriculture, see, the movement has to be for that. I don't know how much these farmers are talking about this. The immediate thing is to stop these laws. Okay, you stop these laws, but unless press the government to subsidize, switch the subsidy from chemical to sustainable agriculture. The whole subsidy in the US, 16% of the agricultural GDP is given as subsidy, either as direct cash transfer or as subsidy for the premium, insurance premium. So that is the level of subsidy that they're giving. So even though their population is just 1% in agriculture, why? Because food security. So the US has to have food security. It can't import food. That is why it is giving all that subsidy to those people. Food security for us is even more important, but there's a totally nobody seems to be talking about this. I don't know what is happening within the farmer movement and all that, whether those leaders are talking about this. The first thing is, okay, you stop these laws, but what ahead? You have to go for sustainable agriculture. You have to shift towards biodiverse farming and creating manure, creating renewable energy. In the farms only you can create renewable energy. All these things have to be done. Without that, I mean, that has to be the agenda. Soil and water conservation and all these. We have facing huge water stress. So these problems, unless my thing has come. So that is what I do on my own. I mean, what we, Subhadra and I, and what a few people who are with us, we are trying to do that. Work on this model. That this is the model that has to be worked on, and we have to get more and more people onto this kind of thing. So in my opinion, that is the way forward. You have to switch. A drastic switch has to take place. That and the thing, this whole problem is that this whole problem of demand in India. The demand is not there. It's the demand, effective demand is not there because the population don't have money to buy and all. So that can be done, using the MGNREGS and all these kind of things, that you provide funds to rural areas to revive the economy, revive the nature and revive agriculture. And then people have money, they will spend, and then automatically even the whole urban economy will also benefit from that on two counts. One, people will be spending there in the villages, and two, they won't be migrating into the cities, because they are getting their livelihoods there. So this whole thing that was there, this invisibility, all these 100 million or 150 million people who have migrated from villages because there is no livelihood out there. And they are coming and living in very bad conditions in city, but because they have nothing there, they are coming to the cities and they're living out here. So this whole process has to be reversed, So you want to go in for automation in the industry, you go in for automation, but in agriculture, you can't have automation. There you have to have labor, you put in labor and give people money for that. You give cash transfers or whatever, whichever way, you give cash transfers and tell people that, you do sustainable agriculture and all that. The various models, you are also aware of that. You are connected to so many people in Andhra Pradesh who are into sustainable agriculture and all that. But anywhere, people who are in sustainable agriculture are facing this problem, because there is no support at all from government. They talk about a lot of things there that is there, but if you analyze the agriculture budget, you'll once on 1 year somebody, normally I don't read the budget at all. 1 or 2 years back, somebody wanted a bite from me on the budget, says that you talk. So then I went through the budget at that time, and I found that some lakhs of crores are being given for chemical agriculture and all that. And that particular year, 1 or 2 years back, the total budget for organic sustainable agriculture was some 200 crores. Can you imagine? Lakhs of crores are given for, and there is talk. The talk is always there. We have to make it sustainable, whether it's FAO or whether it's the government. Everybody is talking of sustainability, but in actual practice, there is no fund support for that. So anybody, anywhere, who is trying to do sustainable agriculture comes up against this barrier. So either he gets some funds from somewhere, he will either crowd fund or get some funding support from somewhere and try to do something, but he won't be able to make it sustainable, because the market, the larger market is not in your favor. Right. So it's very difficult to survive. So so far, except for some firms that are exporting to the US, organic products that they get certified and they export to the US, and they get a huge amount of premium from the US market. Those are the people in India who are making profits, and those are corporate firms, India Organic and things like that. Mm-hmm. Small organizations, they are not able, they are surviving on grant support. Yeah. Some kind of grant support is there. So, and obviously that becomes a very minimal kind of thing. So when you ask me what is the future, I think that unless we can, come to this, that the rural areas, soil, water conservation, and then sustainable agriculture, this has to be pushed. Unless, we try to do this, I don't see. I mean, we are just heading towards doom, in my opinion.
But I think that's a to suggest a way forward for something as complex as the situation. I think this is a very good attempt that you have made, that we should go back to the basics, as basic as the soil. And if we try to work on the sustainable ecological model of agriculture, which is what 60% of India depends on, I think that's definitely something very tangible if we put our hearts and minds to it, and hopefully the government policies can be made to align. I think that's definitely a way forward out of this complex web of issues that we have managed to dig ourselves into.
Yeah, actually, at the moment, the amount of subsidy to agriculture is 9% of the agricultural GDP. The agricultural GDP is very less. It's just 14% of the total GDP.
Overall GDP, yeah.
And 9% of that is the subsidy. So the subsidy amount is not a very big amount. Actually, it should be much more. US is giving 16%. In the European Union, it is 20%. Of course, their agricultural GDP is very small part of their whole GDP, just 2 or 3%. But the point is that whatever is there, even now what we are giving, if we give it for sustainability instead of giving it for chemical agriculture, then there's a huge difference will be made. Because all these, as I said, 85% are small farmers who are not surviving, who are not surviving on the basis of their farming. They are doing some other work along with their farming, and they are surviving. Right. I know, at least I have not seen any small farmer surviving on the basis of, I have seen so many farmers, all these small farmers that are there with 1 hectare or less than 1 hectare of land, they are not surviving on their land. They are doing some other work along with that, migratory work somewhere, and that is how they are surviving. Right. So that is a very sad kind of situation that nobody is talking about. That whole thing, this whole thing is not there. And even in my debates that I had, I said that what is this? You are eating this food. If you are judging the farmers, you are saying that farmers, they are taking subsidies. Don't stop the subsidy. You grow your own food. You try and grow your own food.
Mm.
And then you'll find out that why the farmers are crying. It's
Yeah.
sitting, you're comfortably getting very cheap food, which is not covering the cost of the farmer, and it is not covering the cost of the environmental destruction that that food is causing. And you are saying this, so I told them that this is very bad, this kind of attitude that you have towards farmers. But that is the situation, the power, the people who are power brokers, whether it is in the US or whether it is in India, they have no feeling at all for nature and for the farmers.
That's
That
true.
is the problem.
That's true. In fact, I just posted a blog on the analysis of the agriculture budget, and it's the same consistency in terms of supporting the chemical-based agriculture. And
Hmm.
there is a national organic farming program whereby they have to train the farmers, conduct sessions, and all of this.
Hmm.
And they allocated 12 crores for that.
Yeah, yeah, that's yes, yes.
A newspaper ad these days costs like 6 lakhs to 10 lakhs. A TV
Uh,
spot, a TV ad will cost you a few crores. So what is 12 crores in that in that context? But unfortunately, that's how things are, and it's a long way even to work, even to go back to the basics is such a big challenge now. And I think that's what. So keeping things simple is what I think one way forward. But thank you for the wonderful conversation, Rahul. I loved it as always. And you stay well, stay healthy, and
yeah, same to you. Same
hope
to
you
you.
get back to the fields pretty soon.
Yeah, yeah, same.
All right. Thank you.